Welcome back to another episode on the Aaron Doughty podcast. My name is Aaron Doughty. Today's episode is going to be understanding different aspects of ourself with that of Harry Potter, the different characters in Harry Potter, and how that represents to shadow work. Literally, the whole entire book of Harry Potter is based on a lot of deep stories that are within our collective consciousness. And when we learn about these in the story itself, it helps us understand more about ourselves and also how we can do the shadow work. Because what if I told you that Voldemort was completely misunderstood? Now, I'm not saying that everything he did was right. I'm not saying killing innocent people and being an evil wizard trying to take over the world is right. But what I'm saying is that if you look into his past, you'll see that his environment growing up caused him, in a way, to be that way, to crave power over love, because he was never expressed that love growing up. We'll talk more about this in this week's episode on Harry Potter, shadow work, understanding Jungian psychology. J.K. Rowling herself was someone that studied this for like a year or two because she was going through depression, and she came out of that and then wrote Harry Potter. But she spent like a year studying archetypes and psychology. So it is so empowering to know that this is one of the reasons, I thought maybe, deep down, it's like, it just represents 5D reality. That's why we like this so much. And maybe that is the case. But another aspect of it, it is so genius and well done when it comes to the archetypes that exist within it and how these archetypes all exist within ourselves. And when we become aware of it, it is just such a game changer. So, with that being said, if you guys didn't know as well, I just wanted to kind of talk a little bit about something that I use every single day. This is something that I've been using for about 4 months now, and it has helped me to sleep so good at night. It is called a chili pad. Now, it is this pad that goes underneath my bed. I got up a little bit ago. I got up early this morning, but made me realize how much I appreciate this thing because it is so powerful. I have one in Vegas and Sedona when I go back and forth. That's how important it is to me. And this is what this thing does. What it does is it regulates our body temperature, and it's this mat that goes in between your sheet and your mattress. So you have a sheet over it, and it's this pad that has coils that go through it that is connected to this little thing that goes to the side of the bed that keeps these coils at a certain temperature, that keeps your body at a certain temperature. And what you want to do is you want your body to be at a much less temperature than the room temperature. And normally I have mine at the lowest, which is like 55 degrees or something like that. But basically what this does is this keeps your body at a less temperature than it, because when you get under the covers, it gets warm, especially at night. And what this does is it regulates your body temperature so that you go into deeper levels of REM cycle sleep. So I have this thing that I use to calculate my sleep. It's this band that goes around my strain, my heartbeat, how many calories I burn a day, all that stuff. And when I started using this chili pad, it went up like crazy. My REM sleep went from like sometimes like an hour of REM sleep or 2 hours of REM sleep to like 2.5 hours of REM sleep consistently. Deep sleep, DWS is like the thing. Deep sleep went from sometimes like 20, 30 minutes of deep sleep a night to like an hour and a half a night since I've been using the chili pad. That's my experience with it. I am a huge fan of the chili pad. So if I've actually teamed up with them, reached out to them, now I have a relationship with them where they have offered to give my audience a percentage off. So if you would like a discount on Chili Pad, if you would like to try it out, to use it, it is an amazing piece of technology. You are asleep a third of your life, or half, no, like a third of your life. And the sleep you get very much powerfully affects your body, your psyche, your energy, your vibe. So if you want to check it out, go to aarondoughty.com/chili, CHILI. Go to Aaron Doughty, AARONDOUGHTY.com/chili, CHILI, and then check it out. Apply the code that you see on that page, and you can get a discount on it, but I'm a huge fan of it. Anyways, that's who this podcast is also sponsored by. I wanted to share that with you, that it's something I use, something I'm very passionate about, and that's it. So with that being said, let's get into this episode right meow. Welcome back to another episode on the Aaron Doughty podcast. My name is Aaron Doughty, and today we're going to be going deep on understanding Harry Potter in correlation with shadow work, okay? And this isn't just shadow work like understanding a little bit about, him and how he thinks and his own shadow of like things he's not aware of, but it's the whole entire book series of Harry Potter is based on Jungian, is that how you say it? Jungian, Carl Jung? Jungian psychology. And I used to always think like that Harry Potter is just like how could somebody have figured out, and still it does not take away from J.K. Rowling's creative ability to use these archetypes, to use these shadows in different stories, but basically the whole entire series, it's filled with these archetypes and these stories that at a very deep level of our own psyche really resonates with us. But I want to point out some things about the different upbringings of Harry Potter, of Voldemort, he who must not be named, and other people, just understanding the different energy dynamics and the symbols in the book. And the reason I say this too is because this really has helped me understand more about my own shadow work, my own relationship with the different aspects of myself. And one of the reasons, like this might sound like a little bit of a side tangent, but I have now like what you could call a coach. I mean, it's a coach, but it's like a masculine coach. It's somebody that studies, that does shadow work, and this person's a doctor, like got their PhD in this. But they're also just so my buddy Drew has a coach that he's been with for like 10 years, and recently I've had the ability to be one of his clients also. So now I work with him every week. And a lot of what we do is based on understanding the shadow and also understanding our own trauma, releasing trauma that a lot of times I think for a long time I was very resistant to even believing that I had trauma. It's like, I went through my awakening in 2012, and since 2012, I don't have any of this stuff to deal with anymore. I'm just done. I've figured it all out. I don't have anything else to deal with. But then I found out that, I was holding on to trauma that was within, like literally trauma that was shielding me from pain, and I wasn't really aware of it. And there's a certain breathing technique I've been doing with him. But one of the other main components of this kind of work is understanding my dreams. So one thing that I do is in my dreams, I pay attention to the different themes, and more so than the different things that happen, it's the energy underneath the dream that then shows me something about myself. So the way that he describes dreams and the way that Carl Jung and just also in reality, like we sometimes separate the dream world from our world, from reality. And what I've noticed is there's symbols in even this waking dream. I believe that this reality is a form of waking dream. I believe that at a spiritual level, right now, we are dreaming that this is who we are, and that there's certain synchronicities, there's certain alignments that we can have in life. But I've realized that when I pay attention to these things, I get valuable feedback. Now, let me give you an example of a dream. So the other night, I had this very vivid dream. And it wasn't a lucid dream. In a lucid dream, you're aware that you're in a dream when you're in the dream. I was in this dream, and I was talking to somebody that I know, and in it, I was in this beautiful house that was being completely remodeled. And it was interesting. Like the kitchen had this balcony that was like extending it out, and it was honestly a very luxurious, beautiful inside of a house, very, very, a very big house, very nice. It was being completely remodeled though. And there were certain emotions I felt. And there were other people that came into the house that were, in a way, overstepping the boundary. And I really wanted them to leave. And the energy was that I was with somebody else. I wanted them to leave, but I didn't necessarily know exactly how to tell them to leave. So then eventually what I did is I said, hey, you guys just got to go. I just had the boundary. I just told them, you guys got to go. And I just explained to them why. And then I said, have a nice day. And it was at that. And one thing I've been learning in my life is how to have unapologetic boundaries with my time, with being around other people, with, letting go of the whole people-pleasing mentality. And the symbol of this dream, though, is that, for me, this is what I've learned from what I know about dreams, is that dreams are a representation of our own inner reality. So as I have been subconsciously remodeling my internal reality, I have a dream where I am remodeling the inside of this beautiful house. And then there's also someone I'm with, and there's these people, and I'm learning boundaries. In my own inner reality, which is my inner psyche, I'm learning those boundaries. And many times when we have other people, you may have I've had friends from my past come in. I've had different, of course, people in my life now that are in my dreams. And the thing is it's not always that it's important that you know exactly why that person is there, but many times that person, whoever that is there as a reflection of another aspect of yourself. Like literally they are representing something to you. They may be representing your feminine aspect. They may be representing your father aspect, your masculine aspect. They represent different levels of your own psyche. Okay, so now that I explained all that, you're like, well, get to the Harry Potter. Where's Harry Potter? You said you were talking about Harry Potter. So when we look at Hogwarts, okay, if you watch Harry Potter, there's this giant castle, beautiful castle. And in it, you have the archetype of the old wise man who represents the idea of God in a way, the divine, like masculine. And Dumbledore, throughout the whole book, is pretty much a guide to Harry Potter. Harry Potter is the reluctant hero. Dumbledore is the guide, and Dumbledore is also the wise old man that is the king of the castle. Every one of us. There's a book, by the way, I'll give you guys this right now, that my coach made me read or told me to read, and I've read it. It's only 90-something pages. It's called, and it's, so there's, I know most of my audience is actually women, so I have two books, okay? One is called He, one is called She. I'm not kidding. One is called He, one is called She. That's all it's called. It's He and She. So I read He. It's about the masculine psychology, and it's a story using archetypes. And basically it has to do with this whole story of the Fisher King who's burnt himself, and he's wounded, and this fool goes on a mission to heal the Fisher King. And what this represents is different levels of our own consciousness and different levels of our own psyche of healing our inner wounds from childhood. And it talks about that healing process using different symbols and using different reflections. Now, there's one called He. I haven't read She yet, but I will. But there's another one called She, and She's about the feminine archetype, or the journey for the feminine. Now, a lot of it is the symbols, right? And even in those books, it's about like there may be like a castle that represents like our own inner world, and using different symbology, using different archetypes, we're able to understand different aspects of our own psyche. So when we look at Harry Potter, now first off, Harry Potter is like my favorite book series of all time. Now I know that there's an insane amount of Jungian psychology in it and archetypes and stuff like that, and it makes a little bit more sense to why it resonates with people at such a deep level. However, let's look at, first off, the thing that I've shared on Instagram already. Let's look at the difference between the upbringing of Harry Potter and the upbringing of Voldemort. So if those of you that don't know, Harry Potter is an amazing series. You should go either watch the movies or read the books. But when Harry Potter was a baby, Voldemort, who's this evil wizard, killed Harry's parents, and out of sacrifice, Harry's mom sacrificed herself in love for Harry so that Harry could live, and he became the boy who lived. And then there was this kind of curse, there's this thing on his forehead, and Voldemort, who was the most evil wizard, very powerful, went into hiding for a long time after that, until, of course, Harry's old enough. He's like he goes to Hogwarts. Of course, he doesn't know that he is a wizard. He has evil step-parents up until about, 10, 11 years old when he gets these letters saying, hey, it's time to go to Hogwarts. You're a wizard. And he's like, has no idea he's a wizard. And we'll get into a little bit more of the details in a minute by tying the different symbology of all this. But Voldemort was evil. Harry was good, right? There's like and honestly, deep down in Jungian psychology, I think these two people represent different aspects of ourself. They are literally one of the same coin. Like if you look at the wand, they both have a wand that comes from the same phoenix feather. The phoenix gave 2 feathers, and those only two, and that went to each of the wands because there's a prophecy that they were going to go against each other. Now, here's the difference between Harry's upbringing and Voldemort's upbringing. Harry had that of a mom that sacrificed her love and showed him love, even though he was a baby, but his mom expressed love to him, nurtured him, even though then eventually the ultimate sacrificial love sacrificed her life for him. He was expressed that love growing up. Voldemort, his mom, from what we know, his mom did not express love to him. His dad was a muggle, which means non-magic folk, and he resented his dad, didn't have a relationship with him. And Voldemort was an orphan who felt like nobody loved him. And the difference between the two is that Harry chose love and was somebody that was expressed that love growing up because of his environment, and therefore he was able to really create nurturing relationships, and that was his focus. And in that of Voldemort, because he did not feel the love, what Voldemort did is he then tried to fill the void inside of himself with power. So he focused on power over others, violence, whatever he could do to gain power, because that was his way of gaining the love and support. Or not love and support, but that was his way of filling that void. And if you look at as well, there's many different symbolism to this, so it's very much a mirror in many ways. You have Harry, who is an orphan, Voldemort, who was an orphan, and that orphan in itself is an archetype. There's an archetype of evil step-parents. Well, guess what? Harry Potter had evil step-parents that were very mean, degrading, made him feel worthless. You have that of the teacher, what do you call that? What is it? There's a name for it. The sadistic teacher, which is Snape. And yeah, I screenshotted some of these different pages from what I was reading last night because it was just so powerful. But basically, let me read you this little. I'll link this article below. It's on Medium.com, and it says, to scratch the surface of how alchemical symbolism operates in Harry Potter, the series begins with a book named The Philosopher's Stone. It was originally called the Philosopher's Stone, but it was changed to the Sorcerer's Stone for the American people. Philosophy is just too complex for us. It includes characters. So Nicholas Flamel, who was an alchemist, who was the Sorcerer's Stone in like the first movie, that was actually a real person. And originally the potions teacher, which is Snape, but potions class was actually going to be it was going to be an alchemy professor. So they switched around some of this, but let me just kind of explain this. I don't want to get too deep because this stuff gets a little bit heavier, but there are 3 main levels of an alchemical stage. One of them is rubido, the second one is negrito, and the third one is albedo. So rubido, negrito, albedo. The 3 main father archetypes in Harry Potter is Rubeus Hagrid, Rubido, Sirius Black, Negrito, and Albus Dumbledore, Albedo. Isn't that interesting? These are the 3 levels of alchemical change. And Harry, who there's actually a 3-in-1 protagonist, which is Harry, Ron, and Hermione, which also has a correlation to the 3 base elements of alchemy, which is sulfur, lightning, salt, body, mercury, which, of course, being the Latin name for Hermes, which derive Hermione. So basically, there's way more in Harry Potter than we've actually ever even... It makes it even more magical in my eyes. I really do. I think it makes it even more magical, but we're able to see where a lot of the genius came from in it and why it really resonates with people at such a deep level. So when you look at the different levels of this as well, and we're able to notice that, okay, we have Harry Potter who has been through... If you look at it as well, when it comes to life and death, right? There's different ways we relate to death. And the whole series really is about being dying and being reborn. And I don't mean to ruin the movie if you haven't seen it yet, or the books if you haven't read it yet, but my guess is that if you're even interested in clicking this episode, you've probably been interested in Harry Potter. But spoiler alert, don't listen to this next part in case you haven't seen it. But Harry Potter dies and is reborn, and that's his way, like accepting death in a way. And once he accepts death, he comes back to life. Voldemort will do everything he can so that he doesn't die, including put his soul into 7 different objects called Horcruxes so that he doesn't actually die. And there's a very powerful saying, one of my favorite of all time, where Dumbledore says, when Harry initially dies and goes to this like Purgatory place, it's like a train station, he goes, well, are you saying that is this all real, or is this all in my head? When he's having this like mystical experience. And basically, what Dumbledore says is, of course it's all happening in your head. But what makes you think that it's not real? Something like that. But basically, that's something also that's very much connected to Carl Jung and his own psychology. And there's a picture of J.K. Rowling. She does have some earlier interviews, too, talking about this, but of a little bit about archetypes and how she went through some type of behavioral psychology when she was depressed. And there's a bookshelf on one of these interviews, and behind her there's Freud. You know, Freud and Carl Jung. Carl Jung was in a way, the mentor to Carl Jung was Freud, and Freud was like, she was obviously into Freud. It's on her bookshelf, you know. So my guess is that when she was coming out of depression is when she actually wrote Harry Potter, but she did an extreme amount, like a year or 2 of studying these different levels of psychology, archetypes, storylines, and that's really what had and inspired, I think, Harry Potter just in general. So when we talk about the lessons, the other thing I wanted to kind of talk about was there's these things in Harry Potter called Dementors. And Dementors come after you and they try to suck after your soul. And there's like a symbolism there. But it's interesting. Harry Potter, like the way that you get rid of these Dementors is you say Spectral Patronum and you think of something that makes you, that feels positive. And you put that in the direction of these Dementors. And the thing is when you do that, it gets rid of those. It's like the only way, and you have to be a very powerful wizard, or it takes a lot of practice to be able to do that spell to get these Dementors to go away, because when these Dementors come around, they suck the energy out of the room, they feel real low vibrational, they make you feel depressed. And the interesting thing is in the third one, when Harry Potter is learning the Spectral Patronum, because these Dementors are kind of around and stuff, and Professor Lupin is teaching him, who's the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, there's this scene where they're confronted. There's this little creature that turns and morphs into anything that's the person's biggest fear. So what happens is it's in this cupboard, and each student takes a turn looking at their biggest fear and then saying Expecto Patronum or ridiculous. That's a funny thing. What do they say? They say ridiculousness or something like that, like ridiculous. So basically what they would do is when this big fear would come up, what they would do is they would say ridiculous, And that was the spell. And what they were supposed to do is also see it as something funny. So one person was afraid of Snape, which is another professor there. That was Nevo Longbottom. And what he would do is he imagined Snape came out of this cupboard. And what he did is he imagined him and said ridiculousness or whatever. And it turned him into like a woman that was like wearing a purse and stuff. And it made everyone laugh in the class. There was one where there was like a spider, and what they did is he said ridiculous. Ron did, because Ron was afraid of spiders, and then these skates went on all over the spider, and it was funny to see like a spider that couldn't walk because it was like skating slipping. So it's a lesson in there as well for us to realize that when things seem very serious, when things seem very heavy, if we're able to look at them from a funny point of view, or we're able to see them from that point of view, then what happens is we then begin to loosen up about it. I've applied this in many different ways in my life, and I find it to be very powerful. Now, the other thing, I want to go back for a minute to the Voldemort and Harry Potter thing. Now, Voldemort, his childhood was that to where he was not expressed love or nurturing growing up. Now, this doesn't make it right that he did all the evil stuff that he did, that he was a meanie, that he killed a lot of people. But it does help him understand us. It does help us understand him a little bit more and other people a little bit more, because people are doing the best they can with where they are at. People are doing the best they can from the level of consciousness they are at. And if they have a belief system that says that they're not powerful and that the only way they can be powerful is from taking it from somebody else, then they will do that in order to get power. But really what that desire for power is the lack of feeling love within themselves. And even in my own life, when I first got on YouTube back in 2017, I think that a lot of myself was I was trying to get out of a job I didn't like. I was passionate about making videos, but I became almost obsessed with making videos. I made videos every single day for like 2 years. I developed a belief system that said that I had to work hard to be successful, and I was always grinding, I was always working. I became obsessed to where I was working like 12, 14 hours a day, and I loved it. And the effects of that, though, that I could start to become aware of is that I could see that slowly but surely, even though I'm still doing something I'm passionate about, I could see that there was almost like a feeling of the void, a feeling of a level of emptiness. And it was a distraction from that, from me going so far into what I was doing, which was creating abundance, creating freedom, helping people, but still it was almost like filling a void. So I can see, honestly, from experience, I believe that Voldemort and Harry, we both are either going to feed ourselves with love or power. But a big, powerful transformation happens when we realize that love is power. And that you can have both, and you're more powerful when you're in a loving state. You still have the intention of adding value. That's what I think the key to this whole process is. But I've become aware of these own energies within myself. And it's funny too, because what I would do sometimes, I would do this quiz thing that was on Instagram or something where you push it and it tells you who you are, and it even like has your eyes go through the character. I did it once, and I just kept getting Voldemort. Like, it's just so random, right? But I got Voldemort like 3 times in a row, and I was like, fuck, because I wanted like, I don't know, Harry, any of them, any of the other ones. But I kept getting Voldemort, and I was like, no. But really, that was my own repression of different aspects of myself, of the power-hungry part of myself. Because remember, these are all symbols that exist within us. When you like Nevo Longbottom, one of the reasons being is because he was also like a reluctant hero. One that J.K. Rowling said she almost made him the star of the show, by the way. Do you guys know that? There was an interview I watched, and she said something like that. But he was like this person that wasn't brave, that was in Gryffindor, which represents brave, and he ended up becoming very brave and tapping into the braveness within himself. We like Nevo Longbottom because we also admire the braveness within ourselves. And we acknowledge the meekness in ourselves sometimes, but then the braveness that can come out of that. And that's what we like, right? We like movies of transformation, seeing people being transformed. So all of these energies exist within us. Now, here's another interesting thing. Somebody pointed out to me the correlation between Voldemort and Hitler. And that had me thinking. So what I did is, because it's interesting to me that Voldemort hated mudbloods, which means somebody that was born of non-magic folk, like somebody, two parents that were muggles had a kid and it just so happened to be magical. I think that's even more unique and special, personally. I mean, it's even more rare. You know, if a wizard and a witch have a kid, it's going to be magical for the most part. I think there's exceptions there too. But when it comes to that, basically, Voldemort had this thing where he disliked anybody that wasn't pureblood, meaning both their parents were wizards, which is really a form of wizardy racism in a way. But the irony is that Voldemort himself had a dad who was a muggle. So the part of him that projects out and resists anybody that's not pureblood is a part of himself that he isn't actually accepting. And this also relates, I think, when you see people that are projecting things onto other people. Have you ever seen someone, for example, that is homophobic? They're afraid of people that are homosexual. So what they do is they mock them, they make fun of them. When deep down, many times these people that do that, they have either an insecurity within themselves that they may be that way or they are that way. So they are projecting out a part of themselves that they haven't accepted. And the way they do that is by being mean, going and protesting against people that are homosexual. And that is something that happens because it's a projection of a part of themselves that they haven't accepted. In the same way, it reminds me of this whole Voldemort thing. Now, when I looked at that, I thought to myself, okay, if environment has such a powerful effect on someone's psyche and the way someone thinks, what is the difference between somebody that transforms that and uses that power and somebody that doesn't? For example, the meaning that we give to it has a huge impact on what we do with it. I look to even the difference between me, other people in my family, with some of the pain that we went through, that I went through growing up. I can see how I gave it a certain meaning. At first it was a negative meaning, but eventually I went through a spiritual awakening and I changed the meaning. When I changed the meaning of my past, I let go of all that and it completely transformed my life. I can see other people that I gave it a different meaning and therefore they get a different effect out of it. The meaning is a very powerful part of this. So it has to do with the meaning, which can be autopilot or something that was given to us, or the environment growing up. It helps us understand that a little bit more. Now, when we talk about this as well, now I'm not saying that it makes any of this right, but it does help us understand. There are kids that have gone in and shot up schools. And when they do something like this, it's like, oh, if you look a little bit deeper, you can see, like one of them, for example, heard this on someone's podcast recently, this explanation, but there was one kid that did this. One of the reasons he did it was because his mom neglected him, but she was a school teacher and she loved all of her kids. So he felt neglected and bitter and ended up going into school, killing his mom and all these kids. I don't know how old, I don't know the age or anything like that, but that's an example. The environment, the resentment, the negative emotion of him feeling that. So in a way, a lot of these people are victims in of itself. That doesn't make it right, but it does help us understand that environment and meaning has a very powerful effect on our own psyche. Now, when we translate this over and you look, I was interested, what was Hitler's upbringing? Because Hitler, from what I understand, was also born, I think he was half Jewish, but yet he hated Jews. It's very similar to the whole Voldemort thing, isn't it? So I looked at Hitler's past. He had a dad that apparently was very angry, very abusive. And Hitler also used to beat his sister. They found his sister's journal or diary years later. And in it, it talked about how his brother would beat her and how she kind of didn't mind it because she felt like it was good for her. But nonetheless, Hitler at one point wanted to become an artist, but he was rejected. He was rejected for some school or something like that. And his parents, his dad or his mom, I forget, but his parents didn't approve of him wanting to be an artist either. Now, I'm not saying any of this so that we feel we feel sorry for him, or I'm just showing that the environment and the meaning that we give to different things affects how we show up in the world. Now, the good thing is that we can choose the meaning we give to the past, so we can change even if we did have a harsh environment of the past. But when we look at Harry Potter, when we look at the difference between Voldemort and Harry, one of the main factors is how they grew up, how Harry was nurtured by his mom, and how he gave it the meaning. Like even in the 5th book, for example, the 5th book or the 5th movie, there's this thing where Voldemort has this connection to Harry and therefore can get inside Harry's head. So he's showing their Dumbledore and Voldemort get into this epic. It's one of the coolest things on all the movies. This epic fight with like water and fire and all this stuff. And what happens is he then at the very end gets into Harry's head, and Harry's going through all these visions and feeling like a lot of negative emotion and stuff. And then Dumbledore says to him, Harry, it's not what makes you the same, but what makes you different. And then Harry says, I feel bad for you, he says this to Dumbledore, because you'll never know love. You'll never know friendship. And that's what pulls him back into the moment and pulls him out of that like little psychotic break that he has, where Voldemort's infiltrating his psyche before Voldemort disappears from this fight with against Dumbledore. And it's the meaning we give to things. And so it's going to sound kind of funny, but what could have Voldemort done to not be so, what could he have done in order to heal? He could have done a little bit of ancestral healing, become aware, and also accepted and integrated his own shadow. Could have paid it, he could have done meditations. So it's so funny to say, to talk about Voldemort doing meditations and stuff like that. But imagine that Voldemort does a meditation where he's able to go back to his childhood, give himself the love that he craved growing up, the love from his mom, and that as he gave himself that, he started to feel more worthy and whole and complete. Where he realized that when he started to, he was also bullied. Voldemort was also bullied when he was in the orphanage, and that's what made him become a bully. Remember, bullies become bullies. Bullied kids normally can become bullies. So a lot of also this process of what I've learned from Harry Potter in general is forgiveness, even of my ex-stepmom, for example, who was like a narcissist, very similar to like the Dursleys in a way. Very similar energy. I think that's why I resonated so deeply with Harry Potter, because I resonated with the storyline of the main character, right? And I believe that we all do have magic inside of us. And we're becoming more and more aware of that as we go through like spiritual awakening, and just in general, we unveil these different aspects of ourselves. But when you look at someone's environment and see that had a big part of why they are the way they are, it's easier to forgive. No, once again, it doesn't make it right, but it does help us forgive. So when you look at Voldemort and you see that he wasn't nurtured growing up, he believed he wasn't powerful, he believed he was insignificant. His way of becoming significance was becoming powerful and taking power from other people. Now, in the same way, what we can become aware of is that aspect within ourselves, because realize that Voldemort, and if I resent my ex-stepmom, there's a part of myself that I think when it comes to boundaries, that's something that I've had to also learn, is how to have more boundaries, how not to be a people pleaser. But that's because I've resented and had a shadow in myself of not wanting to be like my ex-stepmom because there was so much pain associated with that. So I, in a way, shut off that part of myself that did have strong boundaries. Do you see what I mean? We resent the part of ourselves that we aren't willing to look at or accept. And because I had a narcissistic ex-stepmom growing up, that, I think, had a powerful effect on that. So One of the things that I think that really helped me do too, is to forgive her, because I realized that she was doing the best she can with where she was. She was at a level of consciousness and a belief system that said that she wasn't powerful, therefore she had to take that energy from other people, and that's why she acts and is the way she is. Doesn't make it right, but it does help me accept it and forgive. And then I realized I look into my ex-stepmom's past. She was abused by her dad. She was bullied by her dad. Interesting. Maybe it's just trickling down, right? The meaning that was given to it. Maybe she made the meaning that she had to be like that. So it's interesting how all these different layers work. But I think the most important thing that we can learn from all this is all these symbols, all these archetypes are within us. The reluctant hero. If you look at any storyline, there's like a hero who has a problem, there's a guide. Almost every movie, you look at Matrix. You got Neo, Morpheus is the guide. You got the girl, Trinity. You got the villain, Agent Smith. But those are all energies that exist within us. Because remember, the Matrix, if you even look at the movie The Matrix, that's could be a whole nother episode in of itself. But in general, the things I wanted to show you is that Harry Potter is very much deeply rooted in Jungian psychology. And when we look at these different archetypes, it helps us understand more about ourselves. And that reality itself is a dream. And when you go to bed at night and dream, you have these symbols that all represent your own psyche. Symbols and reflections of your own psyche. And that when you wake up in the morning, what if this reality itself is also a symbol of the same thing at a different level? Just with a different level of experience, a different quality to it. So really, it's about healing the energy within ourselves, healing our own desire for power or craving of love. What if it is more about us healing these energies inside of ourselves, doing our own shadow work, giving ourselves the emotions that we craved growing up, the nurturing, the love, feeling significant, knowing that we're enough already. A lot of times people that try to become famous or successful, they feel insignificant growing up, so therefore they desire that and they value that. What if they could just feel that now? I've learned to give myself more of these emotions. And as I do, I feel more worthy, whole, and complete, and I find it to be very powerful. But in general, Harry Potter, I think, is a very powerful series if you haven't read it yet. And I think there's so much to learn from the different aspects of it. And now that I know more about shadow work than I've ever known, it's so obvious to me how deeply embedded. It resonates with people such a deep level because these archetypes and these stories are within our collective consciousness. So we see it, we hear it, and we're like, yes. And that, I think, is really cool. So with that being said, if you guys liked this episode, if you have any friends that are into Harry Potter, can you share this episode with them? It's a different way of looking at Harry Potter. I would appreciate it. Also, you could share it on Instagram, IG stories. I'll be resharing the people that share it. Let me know what you thought of this week's episode or this today's episode. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, I'll talk to you guys next time. Peace, much love, and namaste.